Good evening and welcome to the Neighborhood Advisory Board Ward 1 meeting for Monday, September 13th. Let's get a roll call, please.
Mike Ginsburg,
Here.
Valerie Levitt,
Here.
Dana Kilroy, Margot Pisevich, Carrie Rohrmeyer, Bridget K. Spear-Lauren,
Here.
Geraldine Taylor,
Here.
Rhonda M. Thiessen, Jerry L. Wager,
Here.
Carla Warninghouse. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 10. That makes a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item A2, public comment. Please have any public comment. All right, seeing none. We'll move on to item A3, approval of the agenda for the Monday, September 13th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review? Any comments? I need a motion to approve. Okay. Make sure that when you say it, you say your name. So
Jerry.
Thank you.
Who was
The
the
mask
second?
on the right of the table, I can't hear.
You got the first and second?
Yeah, I only got the first.
Who was the second?
I'll second Valerie Levitt.
All those four?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, moving on to item A4, approval of the minutes from the August 9th, 2021 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Gary,
I haven't gone to the minutes yet, I can't hear you, Mike.
that's where we're at.
I have a correction to the minutes,
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, I had one.
second to the last page. Section E, Board Commissioner Reports and Announcements. My correction is that at the intersection of Charlins and Mayan,
yeah,
it did have a four-way stop sign, but now it has a four-way traffic light.
traffic light, thank
My
you.
traffic light.
Okay, I misunderstood.
So
Thank you.
instead of stop signs, it should be traffic light.
I get it. I
We're
will
calling
make
it
that
Jerry's
change.
Corners now.
Pardon?
Jerry's Corners.
Jerry's Corners, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Another correction? Sure.
Yeah, and Jerry Wager, in my introduction, it said I was from the Vineyard area. There is no such thing as the
Okay.
Vineyard area. I
Okay,
only stated that we had one.
okay, but you didn't say where you were from? And you don't
South
have to-
Reno, yeah.
Okay, okay, I'll
It
just
already,
take
it
that.
already describes, the statement describes it well enough.
Okay, I'll take that part out. Okay.
Any other corrections? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Margot,
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, Valerie.
with
All
the
those-
corrections.
Okay. All those for?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you. Move on to item A5, council liaison report.
Okay. Interesting to be at the beginning, but just wanted to give you guys some updates on some things we're working on that you might not always see. Working on some NAB training so everyone's a little bit better prepared and set up for different things like the project developments as well as open meeting law. I think the NABs have been dormant for a little while, so we're trying to put together as a team a training for the whole of the city when it comes to NABs. Another thing that Jenny has me working on, or Councilwoman Breckus, we're working on a neighborhood cleanup at Dickerson Road. If you would like to help, we're going to have a couple dumpsters at the Oxbow Nature Study area and just trying to clean up that area. She noticed, and she's gotten some complaints from constituents, so she's getting on top of it so that we can clean up the area.
You have a date?
Yes, that's going to be 10/8 to 10/10. And I will also send some communication so you know exactly when and where that'll be. Something I was just talking about with Brad Fitch, who works in the building. He was talking about some of the other hybrid options that we have, which will make it a little bit easier when we're doing Zoom meetings like this. But apparently there will be a TV here next time over here to better equip us for the new age where we have a lot more hybrid meetings. Other things Jenny has been working on since she's not here today. She did have a media report on the traffic calming at Skyline that she went over. And we are working with Mike with NV Energy to set up a follow-up meeting about the Pine Haven fire. And then after that, last thing on my list for Jenny was the extended green waste fire hazard disposal program that she brought forward at the last.
I have a question for you on the Skyline traffic thing. I assume they're gonna put up some signs soon. There's not correct signage there. I live there, and when you, if you're going towards Karen or south, coming up the hill, there's a big thing that says 20 miles an hour, and there's no sign yet, but a big thing. If you're going the opposite direction, it says 30 miles an hour right by Oceans Park, and there's no signage. So I assume somebody from the city will work on that.
Kurt, would you be the right person to ask about that? She's asking about the Skyline traffic calming.
For the record, for New York City traffic engineer, actually, that's new information for me, so actually tomorrow morning, I'll double check that. The last I heard is the signage was correct over waiting for pavement markings, but in lines, there may be an issue.
If you come, I have to get onto Skyline from Cashel, and if you pull out the Cashel, you don't see anything either to your right or your left that says there's it says 30 miles an hour and like that 20 feet down.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's coming on, when you're on Cashel going on the Skyline?
Yes,
Okay, I'll double check that. Perfect.
please do, yes.
We'll-
It's very confusing.
Okay, I'll take a look. Thank you.
I just want to thank her for getting the debris removal program extended. That was very helpful.
That was really great.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, shall we move on to A6? Or you are
I covered that, yeah.
staff liaison report, we
Yep.
kind of hit them both at the same time. All right, so we'll move on to business items. Go to B1, neighborhood identification map discussion. This is for discussion only.
Yeah, so this is something we went over at the last neighborhood advisory board. I spoke with Councilwoman Breckus, and this is a pretty simple agenda item. If you have some input about what different areas should be called in terms of the specific neighborhood, I brought over a hard copy of the map over there, also provided some pens. So if your specific neighborhood you don't think is necessarily labeled correctly here, feel free to take a few minutes to go and edit that, maybe at the end of the meeting.
Any questions? Oh, we are just cruising along. I shouldn't jinx it, but knock on wood. There we go. B2, presentation and discussion by Public Works on potential city of Reno stormwater utilities. Discussion only.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me. We're here today to present on the City of Reno's proposed stormwater utility. My name is Trina Lagoon. I'm the Utility Services Director at the City of Reno. So we do appreciate you, having us here today. Next slide. Our agenda today will be to discuss, first of all, what is stormwater, what's the stormwater utility, the benefits of the stormwater utility, how our current stormwater program is funded under the existing sewer utility, our stormwater utility program needs, proposed stormwater utility rates, non-residential crediting program, our next steps, our proposed implementation schedule, and then questions and contact information. So you guys know exactly where you can obtain more information and or provide input. So next slide, thank you. Before we get into what is stormwater, I just want to make sure that everyone understands we have in our community 4 types of water. The first type of water is your domestic water that comes into your house. From that, you have wastewater that leaves your house and goes to the wastewater treatment plant. There's a distribution for water that goes in, there's a distribution system for water that goes, wastewater that goes out. We then have what's called a reclaimed or effluent water system, and that comes out of the treatment plant and irrigates things like golf courses and parks. And then we have a stormwater system. And my point here is that these are all different systems of types. The stormwater system is basically rain or snow melt that does not soak into the ground. And in urban areas, it flows overland on rooftops, driveways, streets, parking lots, construction sites, where it flows untreated into the system of pipes, into ditches, our streams and rivers. So with that, every single property in the city contributes. Oh, I thought you had a question.
Would you prefer that I wait?
Let's wait till she does her presentation with us.
Okay.
Every single property in the city contributes to the stormwater system. And as stormwater flows over these hard surfaces, it collects trash, sediment, chemicals like motor oil, fertilizer that can pollute our local waterways, such as the Kentucky River. A properly functioning stormwater drainage system and pretreatment system can reduce flooding and keeps our Truckee River and other natural systems and waterways healthy. Next slide, please. So what is a stormwater utility? The city of Reno is proposing to create a new stormwater utility, which, if adopted by our city council, would collect a new fee from customers dedicated to improving drainage and water quality, reducing flooding throughout the city. The stormwater utility fee would provide a dedicated source of funding committed exclusively to maintaining and improving these systems. Virtually every property again in a watershed contributes to the city stormwater conveyance system. And so this proposed stormwater fee is based on the demand or amount of impervious surfaces that each property places on the stormwater system. Stormwater fees are common throughout the United States. There's about 1,600 of them across the United States and exist in several municipalities in Nevada, such as Carson City, the city of Sparks, portions of Washoe County, and in southern Nevada. So the benefits of a stormwater utility, again, it would provide a dedicated funding source for engineering analyses and construction for the current and new problem areas, the cleaning and maintenance of storm drains and culverts, rehabilitation of aging infrastructure, addressing the increased frequency and intensity of storms, and compliance with state and federal environmental regulations. I want to point out that the stormwater utility would not provide improvements for new development. Those are all incumbent upon the new development. Okay, so next slide, please. Some examples of areas where we have improvements that we need to fix. Benefits of what you would get out of the stormwater utility. I'm just going to show some flooding events that we've had in a number of places around town. This is at the intersection of Aquila and Thomas Jefferson. So this is in this ward. It's flooded here multiple times. This happens to be the 2017 event. Next slide, please. This is another, actually, this is, that's Sagittarius. Yeah, sorry, that's Sagittarius, just north of Aquila, west of Aquila, apologize. Okay, next. You can see the perspective, that's also Sagittarius. Really fast flowing water, dangerous situation. Next slide, please. This is a secluded circle just west of that street. I'm trying to remember. It's in the old Southwest. It's, well, anyway, it's another localized flooding area off of. It is Workman. It's off, not Daniel. Anyway, Hunter Lake area. So I can't remember the exact street. I apologize. Charles and Hunter Lake area. This next project is in the Northwest. This is the Chalk Creek Assessment and Design. This is an existing channel that was designed as part of a development. It had structural controls in place to keep that channel in place. Those have since failed, sending a bunch of sediment downstream. With the next pictures, next slide shows some pictures of that channel and the failed improvements that then degrade the channel and send that sediment down. It gets all the way down to the Truckee River and impacts our waterways. Here's the 2017 event at the Truckee River. This is at the top of the bank. Many of you who have been here a long time have seen it over the bank and into downtown, creating lots of destruction. This is out on Edison Way. This is actually showing the post-flood event, and it just shows the debris and things that need to be cleaned up after such an event. I think we have a Keeler and Sagittarius again here too. This one really shows like how fast that water is moving in dangerous situations. Here's McCarran Boulevard here. I apologize. Swan Lake at Lemon Drive, that shows the HESCO barriers that will hold back Swan Lake to protect some of those homes out there for that long duration flooding. Next we have Fourth and Stoker. Again, this is showing post-flood event and it just shows debris cleanup, but a lot of this area was underwater and inundated. So the next two slides show our Fourth and Stoker drainage improvement project. Is that also mentioned? I think it is, right? So here we installed a 48-inch culvert that then conveys all that flow away so it doesn't inundate that area. That was completed in 2019. Was about a $6 million project, to give you kind of an idea. It's another photo of the Fourth and Stoker drainage improvement project. So next we'll talk about the city's current stormwater program. Currently the stormwater program is funded through your sewer bill. About $3.50 of your monthly bill, and your bills are quarterly, but we're going to talk about monthly costs. So your $3.50 of your sewer bill goes to pay for our stormwater program. That currently funds about $5.25 million a year, or a total of about $105 million for 20 years. And we'll come back to that amount in just a moment. Our required environmental compliance by the Fourth and Stoker. We've got 30 years worth of studies that show far more improvements that are required, and basically all these known projects with the current funding will never be accomplished under this current program where we ordered $3 to stormwater improvements. So what are our program needs? Our program needs are $440 million over 20 years. And as you recall from this measure, for a total of $105 million over 20 years. So you can see that we're significantly underfunded for what we need to accomplish. And those projects will never be accomplished. So the program needs, the $440 million, this would fix all of the identified projects in our drainage master plans and studies that we accomplished over many years. It would address historic and observed flood events, repetitive citizen complaints, and flood and maintenance responses. It also include the ongoing maintenance and operation and environmental compliance that's currently being funded out of the $350 per month. This next map identifies many of those projects in all of the projects in our capital improvement program. That's a CIP. And this just really illustrates that these projects are located
non-structural BMPs fit into this program? And what priority will they have for funding?
So primarily non-structural BMPs, where we're at right now is we're trying to take care of the larger flood control issues that we have found. A lot of non-structural BMPs, this program will encourage development to implement non-structural BMPs. We do not have a citywide, we do have a watershed tributary plan where we are working on some of those, and those are in the CIP, but it's not, we don't have the same type of program put together as you have in Tahoe, where all of your storm drains then go to a specific, vortex unit. or
Why
something
shouldn't
like
that be part of your fiscal program, your capital improvements program?
So, we talked about the MS4 or our stormwater permitting, and that actually is something that we intend to fund with this program.
We also, yes, sorry. So we are funding our MS4. We're also anticipating that our MS4 will be updated soon and it will have more stringent requirements. And so this is partly, we have added funds in there as a placeholder to react to that because we do anticipate that happening soon.
Your program also kind of offers a get out of jail free card to commercial and industrial large sites that generate a lot of stormwater. You're proposing a 30 to 50% reduction in their bills. Who is going to be able to review all those applications? Are they going to require a site visit, an engineering review? And where are you going to get the staff to do that? And as you grant more and more of these things, isn't the bill going to fall more and more heavily on residential customers?
So the idea of the crediting program is, and why it doesn't give you full credit for your entire site, is that it's only applicable for those improvements which actually mitigate that increase in runoff and or those water quality impacts. So it will require an application, it will require an engineering study and to be stamped by an engineer that it has mitigated those increases in impacts.
Will your staff have the ability to review all those applications? Because I can see where they'd be thousands.
We have actually identified with this stormwater utility program, adding on 6 staff to be able to manage the program. So yes, we will be reviewing those applications and it will be within our utility, not within community development.
Sure.
My question is that there's a $3 trillion bill in Washington right now, which apparently is going to be for improvements to roads and bridges and so forth. Is there any chance of the city of Reno getting a little bit of some of that money for our storm situation?
So we are always looking at any federal grant money that we can find. And again, if we get any of that, we would offset the rates if we find that we can get a big chunk of that, and it does help. Again, this utility isn't meant to amass money, it's meant to fix things. If we can fix things
Can we get a presentation like this to the powers that be, which would be our senators and Mr. Amadei, maybe we could get some of that money to help.
So we actually, there's a number of projects at the city of Reno that we are seeking federal funding. The ARPA funds, I believe, they're not very stormwater heavy. We've tried to find some nexus in the programs that they have out right now, but a lot of them are really roads, wastewater related. That's where with information technology. What are the other ones?
ARPA money, actually turning for the record and just hitting on this high level as it touches your question, but not to get too far off your agenda today. ARPA funds are very specific for their infrastructure needs, and they do not allow for roads. There's very little infrastructure that happens from our stormwater opportunities. They're very much heavily identified for big infrastructure. So looking at technology improvements. So they're specific to COVID-induced issues, not so much just delayed maintenance and things that are necessary in our community.
And then to further, yes, thank you. To further that question, any future funding that comes out will have its requirements as well, and we will evaluate whether anything in our stormwater program will fall under that type of fund.
Other question?
I have a question. For example, you say it's non-residential commercial. So are you talking that duplexes, apartment complexes, those kinds of things are residential or are they commercial?
Those are residential.
And so how do you then portion that?
So they're apportioned by if you have 100 apartments on a parcel and it has 100 ERUs, each apartment would pay 1 ERU, if that makes sense. That's the simple math. It's never going to be that simple.
Right. No, I understand, you could have 30 apartments, you can have 300.
Right.
Other questions over here?
As you know, recently there was a project proposal and proposal to pipe 14 miles of the urban section of
Steamboat Creek.
yes, and have you had discussions about doing that as a part of the stormwater utility? And if so, how would you handle runoff if it can't get into a pipe?
So as far as the city of Reno is concerned, we have not had any discussions with piping 14 miles of Steamboat Creek. Having said that, we do recognize that we do have issues with the Steamboat Creek. There are many, they're very complex. The Steamboat Creek, while many believe is public, it's actually an easement over private property. So each individual homeowner owns a piece of that and there's an easement over it. That makes the process of doing anything, as you're probably aware of from outreach that happened, difficult. We are looking at working with the NRCS separately to look at similar funding that was proposed before with the Ditch Company. However, starting out with a much more robust public outreach and program. Right now, we have a consultant looking at the Steamboat Creek and looking at those locations where it spills out, looking at downstream infrastructure to see if it can handle where those spills are. As we know on Aquila, it cannot. Sagittarius and Aquila, that it cannot. So looking at that project is to look at what improvements would be required in order to create locations where it naturally spills and make sure that that can be safely conveyed through town instead of the idea of just piping the entire thing. So we're looking at evaluating those types of
Point of
alternatives.
clarification, it's Steamboat Ditch, not Steamboat
Sorry, I
Creek, because
apologize,
Steamboat Creek is south.
I apologize, you're right. Steamboat Ditch. Said it again.
And one last thing, if we look, if our watersheds continue to burn and we have more intense storms, less snowpack with climate change, and given the amount of pollution that stormwater delivers to the Truckee River, which is a high resource designated river, I might add, what's going to stop these bills from just ballooning in the future? Part of the cost of this, you pointed out as being environmental compliant. It's very possible that urban stormwater will be targeted in future Water Pollution Control Act amendments. So we might be talking $60 to $100 per residence this year, but in 5 years, that could be triple or quadruple that number.
Well, I mean, environmental regulations we do have to comply with, and we do agree that those environmental regulations on stormwater are anticipated to increase. We don't know what those are yet. We haven't seen that. We have included some amount of environmental compliance above and beyond what we do right now in anticipation of that. I can't tell you right now what that increase is going to be because we don't know what those regulations are. But part of the purpose of the stormwater utility again is that we've got, repetitive flooding areas, things that we haven't fixed for many years, aging infrastructure, increasing the storm intensities and frequencies. It really underlies the need for the stormwater utility so we can start addressing these things and reduce the amount and frequency of damage, destruction, flooding problems, water quality issues, all in the above.
But I think a stormwater utility that only focuses on hard fixes as opposed to looking at watershed issues and trying to provide a variety of alternatives for flood control and only focuses on water quantity as opposed to water quality is going to be in trouble down the road.
We do have our watershed tributary assessment program that we're also, that was $10 less. Yeah. So we're, and we're just now getting back into that. COVID's put a hold on some of those projects, but We are looking at watershed-wide water quality issues and improvement programs. Again, Chalk Creek is one of those. We did receive a 319 grant and a One Truckee River matching grant for that project. So we are working on both of those at the same time.
Is there any reason why all the ravine floods, particularly in Ward 1, which is crisscrossed by the mine, I happen to live on one, couldn't be used for temporary stormwater retention?
Typically, the ravines that we have, especially in Ward 1, are steep and they don't provide enough relief. And so no, it's not, your storm drain system does utilize those ravines, it utilizes the ditches, it utilizes the entire system to convey it down and get basically everything to the Truckee River, especially in this ward. So they are being used, but what you would have to do would be to dam those up, and you just don't have very much relief. It wouldn't provide, and by relief I mean topography, and it wouldn't provide very much volume to mitigate runoff.
See another question, yeah.
How do you calculate the houses or swimming pools to drain their pools into the stormwater? Is it just a hard stick, or do you go right no matter what? You know about swimming pools? I don't know. Yeah, I would venture to guess that that was not calculated in just because of the methodology of looking at GIS and hard surfaces. I would guess that that swimming pool was considered a hard surface, but not added in with the water physically located. Right, because the neighbors who did that pool that did stormwater, who would think maybe more responsible. Or
I think they go into the sewer.
not in my neighborhood. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we're allowed to actually just drain so the way it was out. Yeah.
I have one question. So if we get sewer bills, are we gonna get a stormwater bill?
It would be on the same bill, you would get the same bill, it would be a line item on your sewer bill.
So it's not part of property tax, right?
No, it's you would be on property tax.
Any other questions? Any audience questions? Thank you for your time. You guys got a lot of good feedback tonight, I think.
Yes, thank you very much for your feedback, the questions. We do log all the questions that you've taken from this notes up here. We do log all those. We'll be bringing your questions back to our council and receiving further direction. So thank you very much for giving us time to present today.
Thank you for your time. Move on to item D3, City 2022 Neighborhood Street Project and Continuity. My glasses are foggy. Strong.
If it's okay, I'm gonna stand up. I think I feel a little bit more comfortable, if that's all right. My name is John Simpson. I'm a senior civil engineer with Public Works in the Capital Projects Division. The agenda item says possible action. I think today we're going to give you more updates, but we're definitely here to hear your feedback today. The city of Reno has about 730 miles of road that we take care of. About 28% of that is maintained by RTC. Those are our larger roadways, which is water collectors, arterials. The remaining 520 miles of road is considered our residential streets. That's something that our city takes care of through our street fund. Each year, we rotate through 3 different areas. We do southwest, northwest, and instead, and then the northeast and southeast. And we kind of rotate through those 3 areas each year to make sure that we are equally taking care of roads throughout the city. We are in the southwest area, so that means that Ward 1 gets to see some roadway improvements. This year, we have 4, I say this year, because we're working on the projects right now, but it's the 2020 projects are scheduled for next year. We have 4 of them. We have one, what we call the Slope Project, Humboldt North, Humboldt South, and the Watt neighborhood. 3 of those is in Ward 1. Slope, Humboldt North, and South are all in Ward 1. Often, you can next time, often we get questions and ask, how do we pick our roads? Who picks the roads and who determines which ones we select? And it's a question that we get all the time. Each year, we have a large number of team members that go out and walk every single, well, it's not each year, but within a 3-year period, our staff walks every single road and they assess and look at the cracks and they evaluate each road and the condition of that roadway. That goes into a program, which in turn spits out what we call a pavement condition index. It's kind of a technical term, but it gives the road a score. When our road drops below 55, that triggers our staff to look at that road a little bit closer because we know that we're getting to the point where we will do some improvements to the area. As you can see, this is just an example of the Humboldt South neighborhood. You can see some of the scoring that we have in there are all the way down to 17, 18, 30. They're pretty low. And if you jump to the next couple of slides, you can see what we call allergating, I can't say it now. Allergating. Well, you know what I'm talking about. But you can see the pavement that is failing. Shortly you start seeing potholes popping out and other things happening. You can see that the curb and gutter and poor condition. These are areas that we want to take care of and do improvements to the neighborhood. So what are our goals? What do we want to do when we're doing our street projects? Obviously, we're going to improve the streets. We're going to improve the sidewalks and the curb and gutter. That's just kind of straightforward. But some of the other things that we're going to be looking at, we look at our city infrastructure, our storm drain, and our sewer system. Do we have areas in the neighborhood that fill up a pond and cause drainage issues? Or do we have conditions of our sewer system that need to be repaired? We look at safety, whether that's pedestrian safety or through signage and striping to improve the neighborhood. Sometimes we're looking at traffic calming to help the neighborhood. So we look at safety, and obviously our goal is and street units are great. When we start our projects, we're gathering a ton of information. We go to our public service requests that we get for people calling in and saying, hey, we have this issue with the crosswalk, or we have this over here, and we gather up all that information. We look at crash data and pedestrian incidents so that we know what's going on in the neighborhood. Do we need to install some other safety measures to make it safer for the community? We'll look at condition of the infrastructure. Obviously there's some more technical issues where we're looking at the soil conditions and the geotechnical stuff that ultimately will determine our roadway section and in order to create a road that has a long life. Utility coordination. So all these roads are often selected 3 or 4 years in advance, and they often go to city council a number of years ahead of time because we want to work with our utility companies and make sure that when we put a brand new road down, some of them come behind us and dig it all up. and so we reach out to our utility companies. In some of our neighborhood areas, NV Energy or Commonwealth will come in ahead of us and do improvements to our aging infrastructure so that they have an opportunity to fix those things before our street unit comes through. We also reach out to the property owners. So we sent the property owners all letters a number of months ago, early this year, so that they knew that the project was coming through in their neighborhood. When you have a sewer lateral or a new water service or someone wants to bring gas line into their house, now's the time to do it. We will eliminate the pavement fees that we normally charge individuals, so it's a little bit cheaper for them to come in there and take care of that work, and it preserves the road. It prevents people from cutting those things open. So we reach out to the neighbors also and let them know it's coming and encourage them to take care of some of that stuff. So what are the schedule for these projects? We have 4 of them on here, so this is pretty basic, but we're going to be working on the design of these projects probably until December, January timeframe. And then shortly after that, we put these out to bid. And we hunt down a contractor that will do the work for us. Construction, we anticipate starting early spring or late spring, early summer for the majority of these projects. I'm gonna jump in and give you a little bit more detail about some of the neighborhoods that we're working on. The Swope neighborhood. This neighborhood is near the middle school. We have reached out to Washington County Schools and we're working with them. So a unique aspect of this is we're installing 5-foot sidewalk in front of the schools to give them a little bit larger, wider sidewalk in front of the school there. We're also working with them to install a crosswalk right in front of the school with some flashing beacons so that the kids are a little bit safer to walk across the road. Most of this entire neighborhood already has 4-foot sidewalks in there. We will be looking at the condition of the sidewalks and the curb and gutter to do improvements to those things. We have a number of pedestrian ramps. We're going to actually fix about 38 of them in that neighborhood. This roadway has about 1.1 miles of roadway that gets repaired and fixed. Humboldt North. This one also is about 1.2 miles. So it's similar in the amount of road that we're fixing and replacing. This project area has sidewalk and throughout the whole entire area, it's either 4 feet or 5 feet. So sidewalk exists in this neighborhood. There was a project, I think in 2009, that came in and did a lot of improvements with the sidewalk in this neighborhood. So a lot of that's in good condition. However, the pedestrian ramps are outdated, so we're not pulling them. They of those are repaired. The keynote for this neighborhood is we've evaluated the sewer system in this neighborhood, and there's some repairs and some work that has to go on with the sewer system in this area. So before our street unit comes in, you'll see construction crews coming in and doing some big work and some of that stuff in the neighborhood. A lot of that's kind of in the alleyways, so we'll be fixing a lot of those. And the last area that's in Ward 1 is the Humboldt South. This is one of our most challenging neighborhoods that we have. Part of that reason is we have sidewalk on Humboldt Lander. However, Wright, Pueblo, and Arroyo have no sidewalk or minimal sidewalk in those areas. So providing a safe pedestrian route has been challenging for us. And so this project we've been working diligently on and formulating plans of what we can do to best service the neighborhood in this area. And it's been a challenge. Another item is Tumwa's infrastructure in this area has been determined pretty old. So not only will you see sewer work in this area, but Tumwa will also be in here before city comes and does their work. So you're going to see Tumwa, the city sewer system, and the street unit kind of impact this neighborhood all at once. So there's a little bit more impact on some of these projects when we go through, but in the end, when we're all said and done, you're going to just have a great neighborhood and little to worry about. Because of some of the challenges that we have with this neighborhood, we're looking to meet with the property owners. And so please slide to the next slide. As you can see, we have some areas, if you look at the pictures on the side, there's some areas that just lend themselves to kind of having that work well. And in other areas, we have mature trees, elevation differences, some really challenging issues that we're going to have to solve with this project. And so, as you can see, the highlighted areas where the sidewalk info, the highlighted areas in red are the areas where sidewalk does not exist. So we don't really have a really good safe pedestrian route for a lot of individuals in this neighborhood. And that's something that we want to take care of. We plan to meet with the property owners on this project. The date that's on there, it says October 5th. I apologize, that was done a little early. That's why it says tentative. That meeting has been scheduled for October 6th at the Plymouth Gym. We're gonna meet with individuals there. We're sending out notices to all the property owners that are in that neighborhood. And we're looking for feedback from them. We want to hear their concerns and hear their preferences and some of the stuff that's going to directly impact right in front of them. And so we're going to reach out to them and hopefully get some good direction on some of those things. We have a plan in place. We want to share that plan with them at this meeting and get input feedback from them. Again, my name is John Simpson. I'm with Public Works and Capital Projects. Today, John Smith's here with us. Diego couldn't make it. He is actually coaching the soccer team right now, so he couldn't make it here with us today. But John Smith is working with the Humboldt Street Project. You have his contact information up there. Please feel to contact him directly if you'd like to, or you can reach out to myself. Diego's up there for the Swope neighborhood. You can call him.
Also, some cards.
Great, so it looks like I have some questions. Go ahead.
Just curious, are the property owners responsible for any of the costs to do this?
So the neighborhood street projects are funded through the street program. And so all the street repairs, sidewalk repairs, and those types of things are always paid through the city's funds that go through there, we rotate through the city. However, on occasion, we have what we call special assessment districts that will go in, and the sidewalks are part of the responsibility for the property owners. In this case, where sidewalk doesn't exist, our city council determined that that's not a good idea to charge property owners impact the yard and do some of those things. So for the projects that we have this year, we don't plan to have any special assessment district.
That was my question, would the property taxes be raised?
No,
The improvements.
no property taxes will be raised. Our city street funds is what funds these projects.
Good to know.
Yes, John, a couple of years ago, you had a special assessment district over in my area along San Mateo, Belford Road, that whole area. That was very expensive to homeowners. We're talking several $1,000s for homeowners. And you make a priority of connectivity, but sidewalks in that area are a mismatch. I mean, you can walk down one street and there's a couple of sections of sidewalk and there's lawn and this, and there was absolutely no effort to basically build and try to infill sidewalks where they were missing. It seemed like it would have reduced the overall cost to individual homeowners if the cost of the entire project had been spread over a larger number of residences.
So we do try to get the cost of savings by doing work on the sidewalks and those type of improvements at the same time with our street unit, because we will see a cost savings when the contractors are already out doing some of those activities.
Yeah, I get that part.
Our special assessment districts, we would like to take care of the entire city and make connectivity a priority all over the place, but we are bound by the funds and some of the things that we have on our neighborhoods, and we like to work with those things within the street units that we have. If we start spreading that out and going way beyond the street unit, some of those areas, we're not going to probably see the same cost savings that we would if we were to keep it consolidated.
So it's largely city council's reluctance to bill more homeowners that prevents connecting more sidewalks.
I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say that. We're saying that the reason why there isn't a special assessment district here is because the neighbors were already assessed back in 2009, and we can't double assess them.
Okay.
So the Humboldt North area was assessed before in 2009. Humboldt South, per the city ordinance guidelines, when there is no sidewalk in the area, we typically like to work with the property owners on something.
Okay.
I have two questions. I'm sure we drive by close.
Yes.
I've had as a former parent of there. You would be putting any cross lights on that side. because that's actually where they tell you to drop your kids off.
We are adding additional crosswalks on that side of the street. I know on a couple of corners there, we have a number of students that cross the street at those locations. We are adding in additional sidewalks. We are not installing flashing beacons at those locations, but we are installing additional
But
sidewalks.
just so you know, that's where they actually tell you.
Yes, and we worked directly with Washington County Schools, and I think part of the improvements to the school building itself, I know they're doing a bunch of improvements out there right now. Part of that is they evaluated the pedestrian safety out there, so we're working with them to make sure that we're doing.
Okay, and then my other question is, in the older years where you put in sidewalks as a road, what kind of effort will you make to try to, I know that's the allure of the neighborhood that I live in, is the trees. Is there gonna be effort to try and save those?
Every effort,
Yes,
every effort.
we spend a lot of time and effort trying to save trees.
I know it's not
We-
always easy, but
We do understand, and especially in that Humboldt South area,
Yeah.
there are some large mature trees in that neighborhood, and we don't have any intention to try to remove any of those. with this
We
project.
work with your forester,
oh,
and
great.
we do, if there's a question about this specific tree, and if it's like it's disease, or if there's an issue, we always give your forester and look at those.
Okay, so for the record, so everybody knows why you know so much.
Oh,
maybe you should
I'm
say-
sorry, I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is Carrie Kosky, she's the city engineer here at the city, she's the brains behind the operation here for our public works department, so
I don't
she's.
know about the brain. It's too late in the day for that.
Just thought I'd throw that out there. So any other board questions? Any audience questions? This says for possible action, and I don't know what action we need. to
No,
take,
no,
but
no
if
action
anybody
today, I apologize, this is just an information update for today. But we're here to hear any input if you guys have any today, and so we,
Very, very helpful.
yes,
All right, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Moving on to item B for a presentation and discussion by Public Works on Ambassador Drive traffic calming proposal.
Good evening, for the record, the traffic engineer, here to talk about the Ambassador Drive traffic calming. And so this kind of an overview of the neighborhood here. Ambassador Drive is the major north-south route. So we have trailers on the south end and rural, on the other end on the north end. Also, people are familiar with this area. We also have legacy traffic calming, which we know is on the north side. And so, in evaluating the traffic calming, we're looking at this area right here, right in center mall, where the marker is, and there's a trail crossing and some open space in there. Next slide. So the request for a traffic calming, so in 2020, that probably was actually reconstructed. And during the reconstruction process, there was concerns that the new pavement surface would actually increase speeds. So after that neighborhood was actually reconstructed, we went in there and performed a traffic study. So over a 90-day period of collecting data, we found that the 80th percentile of free flow traffic is 33.5 miles an hour. So in the 85th percentile of traffic, percentile speed limits is 85% of the motorists are traveling at least 33.5 miles an hour. So the average speed would be the 50th percentile. And so the city of Reno currently has a policy for traffic calming, and that threshold is 32 miles an hour. As you notice, we're just slightly above the city limit threshold.
What is the speed limit?
What is the speed limit?
25 miles an hour. Next one. So as far as design considerations, this Ambassador Drive is actually a primary emergency vehicle route. Having that designation is the fire department has to review everything that goes on that roadway because since it is primary emergency vehicle route, they're concerned about response times. However, this particular street is unique in the sense that legacy traffic calming already exists on the north portion with the speed humps. So working with Reno Fire, in consideration of fire response times, Reno Fire was permitting essentially horizontal reflection or anything that would move traffic horizontally versus vertically like a speed hump, which also tends to damage Reno Fire's equipment. Next slide. So that having been said, we're looking at different design considerations for that open space portion where that trail crossing is. And so we came up with an angled slope plan design. So you can see here, it actually deflects traffic horizontally. And so the design speed for that is about 20 miles an hour. I'm also made a comment that it's very similar to Keystone Avenue. So those who are familiar with Keystone Avenue on the north side, there's, I want to say about 3 of those slow points. Gosh, we probably designed this about 20 years ago. And for those who actually went through them, they're quite aggressive, actually. So, next slide. So in consideration of the slow point, we actually did a walk-up at our city yards using cones with the exact dimensions. And then we ran actually city equipment through that design. You probably noticed in the picture, we had a snowplow there and also a fire truck. We also ran some street sweepers in there as well. So the key was we wanted to make sure we had a design that Ring of Fire was comfortable with, and which they were in that case. Also with the snowplow, we were able to get the blade through the cone with no problem as well. Next slide. So when we actually got the design and then we got the speed study, we actually reached out to the neighborhood. So we targeted Ambassador Drive itself with the adjacent property owners on along their streets in approach of the master. And so we actually had mixed results there. So of the 61 notices sent, we only received 5 comments back, and those were mixed. We had 2 in opposition of the traffic problem, 1 in support, and then 1 comment was a completely different treatment, completely outside of the project scope, and then just a request for clarification, which we provided. Now, granted, when we put out the flyer, it was if you had concerns, please contact us. So it could be conceived that they didn't reach out to us and we didn't have any concerns and we're good to go. But the primary reason I'd like to bring before we have is we did receive very mixed results. So this was essential for the NAB feedback on this particular project. Next slide. So the staff recommendation on this is to move forward with the placement of the initial points. Primarily because the 85th percentile speed was measured 33.5, which again does exceed the threshold for the state policy on traffic calming. So in this case, it is appropriate. Staff did put in quite a bit of work into the design and the testing of it, and we don't anticipate any conflict with specific time. Next slide. And with that, I'm just going to invite any questions and feedback.
Just can you go back to page 1, the map, please? Okay. Move it up a little bit, no, up. I want Charlotte's Avenue on there. There's Charlotte's Avenue. Yeah, there's Charlotte's. And what we have found, those of us who live on Charlotte's, is that people are using Ambassador as a shortcut to get onto Charlotte's, to get onto exit 9 to go on Interstate 80. Are you finding more than one calming effect?
So this particular project, we're just looking at the single points. And then we have the additional systems on the other side.
If we just discourage people from commuting on Ambassador Drive by installing those calming things, then that makes it safer for people making a left-hand turn onto Charlotte's to get onto Rob to Interstate 80. That would help. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be completely honest with you, we were looking at through traffic on that as well. There was some thoughts of making possibly Charlotte's a right in, right out. That was something that we vetted through the fire, again, being the primary emergency vehicle route. It was something that they were really discouraging. The other concern that we had is if we actually put some treatments here to eliminate the cut through traffic, as you mentioned, that there was a good possibility that the new cut through traffic route would have been from Mayan to Ambassador to Walnut Creek back over to Rock. The consideration there is now we're placing vehicles in a school crossing zone versus Charlotte's. So yeah, it was something that we definitely.
That intersection is very busy because we've got a Starbucks and a gas station and a bodega. And there's already a light at Rob Drive, so they wouldn't put another light so close together.
Yes,
You have the light for the pedestrians that are crossing that flash, which has made it a lot safer. But yeah, you could discourage people from commuting on Ambassador if it helped.
Absolutely. And to your point as well is, you probably recall that we just having that problem in the last couple of years, crosswalk RFPs. And you're absolutely right with the traffic signal is the spacing is just a little too short to run drive. So.
Other,
Okay.
Does your design typically include a crosswalk as well at that location?
This particular treatment did not include crosswalk. It was just a purely to students of the vehicle. Thanks, Bridget.
I just have feedback. I live right next to the diplomat, just one street over. I live next to the diplomat,
Okay.
one street over. And I didn't get one of the cards because I'm not on diplomat, but I think it's a fantastic idea. As somebody who lives right off of Ambassador, I actually drive Ambassador and Keystone every single day in my commute, and the traffic calming makes all the difference.
okay, other board questions? The audience questions? And, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll move on to development projects, item B5 or B51. So on these development projects, if anybody has any comments they want to make, you can put on the development project review forms that are being at the table. So this is B51. Charlotte residents.
Hello. My name is Gordon Magnan. I am an architect working on the shower areas with Patrick Walsh, who is the homeowner there. I think we can go to.
Yeah, one second. I'm just having trouble on the Zoom in.
While you're doing that, I want to give everybody a little background of why we're at this point in the project. My client started this project in 2014 under a different architect at the time. That architect had requested the same setbacks that we're requesting now. We've actually switched this over from a variance to a major deviation. Is the path that we're looking to pursue with this forward and working with our planning manager. However, we basically back in 2014, the architect at the time had brought these varied setbacks to the planning manager who approved it through administrative approval. At the time, that made its way into a building plan check set, but it never made its way into a formal letter to the clients or any record outside of that. So the only public record we have is like the approved permit, which they ultimately decided not to do this addition that we're talking about today at that time for cost reasons. But wanted to start this project again. We started about a year ago, like that. And basically worked through a design that was very similar to what they had in 2014. I think we can go to the next slide. Which is essentially in addition to the northwest side of the house, with the setbacks that we thought were still kind of grandfathered in. As we were getting this project to a point where we were going to take it and get consultants ready and bring it to plan check, I talked to Patrick and Jackie about it and said we should probably double check the planning because I knew there was like a code change that occurred last year. In doing so, we talked to the planning manager, we talked to the community development manager, and brought this approved building permit set that showed the setbacks that we're requesting today, all the way to the city attorney's office that ultimately said that those setbacks would not stand without a formal letter from the planning manager at the time. So obviously my clients have spent a lot of money and a lot of time kind of getting to this point. And we're basically, because of this sort of going to the level of the city attorney's office and not having these setbacks approved, it was suggested by planning staff that we go through either variance or was a major
a major concern or major deviation. So that's where we are today. We submitted everything, and we can just kind of start going through the slides. These are just renderings of the project, so this is kind of looking from the backyard to the front. The project is very simple. It's a very small home existing that we're going to do a 2-story addition on. So you're seeing living dining kitchen below and a master suite above, and then we're doing a subterranean garage that's access from the pond drive. This floor plans, we have a note on that, it's not showing up where the added area is.
Yeah, if you press the button again, it shows up.
Cool. Yeah, so this is the added area. Second floor addition. And so, I mean, these are the formal requests that we're asking for. 20'8" from Char Circle. We were grandfathered at 17 where the existing building front is on that side. And then 5 foot from the pond, which is actually 35 feet from the existing road edge, which cannot be improved in the future. And we did go through a lot of studies on this. This property is very constrained. It has a septic system on it, septic tank and leach field. There's also a utility easement on the south side of the property. So the red area that you see is impossible for us to improve in any of that area. So we're pretty limited to where we can do this addition.
And then just the word, so the sort of white part of the plan is where the existing house is, the gray part then is the addition we're talking about.
So yeah, essentially, I mean, the property is very constrained. The existing septic system is just a hard, very hard thing to work around. We go to the health department, they have setbacks from repair areas, tanks, leach fields, all of that, which makes it impossible to kind of develop in any area there. And then as part of our major deviation, essentially what we're doing is what was used in the previous findings back in 2014, and we're just illustrating that none of the properties in this neighborhood are meeting setbacks by current standards. So we've gone through, we've created some exhibits. I mean, there's houses. We can just go to the next couple slides, I think. Down the pond drive, setbacks vary from 4 feet to, I think there's one that's 30 feet, which is the current zoning code front yard setback. But they're all non-conforming. And so pretty much what we're asking for with this major deviation is that we can also do our development with non-conforming setbacks. Similar, yeah, sorry.
So yeah, the house as it is in white, where the pink bars are the setbacks from the pond, the yellow are the setbacks from Char. So in close, none of the houses are within or more than 20 feet on the pond side, and really no more than 25 feet on the Char side. And when you zoom out, that continues throughout the whole neighborhood. So there's no houses that are within the existing code.
How many neighbors been contacted?
Yeah, so I talked actually one of them was kind of shelter.
You see the card. My home is where it says 14.5, just which is to the east of their home, and that's absolutely right. My home was built in 1965, and half of my front yard improvements were sitting in the right of way. And, it's like the city map, LaFawn, twice as wide. That it needs to be. Well, it doesn't really make any sense.
For the record, can you say your name, please?
Grandfather in.
Sorry. For the record, can you say your name?
Oh, and I'm sorry, Mark McKibben, and I live at 2031 Drive.
Sorry, Margot. We've talked with all the immediately adjacent neighbors. You'll the slide about that. This is one house across the street on Char. There's some view concern with the 2 stories, so I actually have a slide showing the view from their house and kind of how this is relating to that. So we haven't talked about the immediate.
But we have to approve this.
So with the
Planning
planning
commission, right?
commission, correct.
So this isn't marked as an action item.
No, this is just for discussion.
So you can fill out the comment cards down there and they'll get turned in. So this is more about informational for this group.
informal.
You're just gathering information.
Just presenting to neighborhood advisory.
So you can fill out one of the cards down there, if you're opposed for it or you're for it, and then those comments are submitted, so.
The neighbors out there have been consistent.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the difference between when you have to get a variance versus a major deviation? What's a kind of a break point there?
My understanding is the variance, you have to show a hardship within the physical nature of the property, where the major deviation is more about using the justification of other people have it, so we should have it too.
For the record, City of Reno, part related to City of Reno, Community Development Partnership, it also limits the degree in which the variance is, or the deviation is given. So a variance, you can go to a full deviation standards. A major deviation, you're limited to 50% of the deviation.
That's correct.
And that's being
Yeah.
considered the staff review.
So is it because warehouse is newer and all these other houses are?
No, actually, ours is, those are the oldest house in there, it's 1959. And the city said that they wouldn't grandfather in, so we had to go through this process because they had a deviation.
But the original permits, like in 2014, did. So that was kind of like the point, is that they grandfathered in the front yard setback of 17 feet from Char Circle in 2014, and then a 5-foot setback from the pond, which is 5 foot off the red property line. And just went to it, 5 foot off the red property line here. But if you go all the way to the road edge, it's 30 foot from the property line to the road edge. So for all intents and purposes, it meets a 30-foot front yard setback, which is current standard on that side.
On the drainage,
What's that?
that's drainage there?
No, it's a steep drop off, so the tailboat just drops off on that side.
Yeah, but there's actually a photo, I think, looking down the street toward Mark's house. And you can see like our easement, I guess is what you call it, it's not our, it's really steep. So.
It's a road right away.
So, yeah, so if you expand the road, Mark would have a 10-foot tall driveway.
So what was their specific reason for not doing it?
I just think because the way that previous administrative approval was, I guess how it was approved was just like a word of mouth between the planning manager at the time and the architect. He put it on his plans, and those plans got submitted. There is a building permit that has those on the cover sheet for the setbacks. But when the city went to the city attorney's office, my understanding is that like there was not a formal letter written from the planning department's office. We're not going to stand by that.
So there was nothing about the fire scene or drainage or?
Well, the other architect used the same findings. So, I mean, he talked about the same exact thing that we're talking about today. So it's like, you can't improve the like, you can't expand the Fawn Drive because of the topography running down the road. You know, we're grandfathered in at 17 feet from Char Circle. So that was kind of, it's basically like the same findings that we used for the major deviation.
Basically trying to formalize.
Yeah,
Well, that's done informally in the past.
and maybe as a side note, the house at the end of the pond, or near the end of the pond, you can see there's a step. They actually got the city to abandon that easement. Which I would like to avoid that process because we were just trying to build up to the easement, but.
So were some of these grandfathered in?
I think it was just under.
Well, it's under Washoe, yeah, it's under Washoe County, right? So this is annexed in around 2000. So it's, actually the neighborhood we saw the flooding earlier is down near the bottom of the hill to the northeast.
Is that a plan B? If plan A doesn't work, you have a plan B?
Plan B is abandonment of public
Yeah,
right
so
of
we're
way.
just right?
Or you put all your eggs in one basket?
No, I mean, it's a challenge because this is actually plan B. We started off wanting a garage and an addition in the driveway, which you can see off of Char. And then we learned about the easement that hadn't been surveyed before. So there's a utility easement on that side that is usable. There's a city easement on the other side that's, I think, everyone's perception not usable. So our thinking is it makes more sense to build on that side. So that's the evolution of the project. Is this is plan B. Plan C is the easement. We like to have more space. You know,
Have you been to the planning commission already?
No,
You're preparing to go.
we are, so our hearing part of, our meeting is October 20th.
So is this, you know, more of your presentation?
I mean, there's a couple more slides that just show, I mean, go through it quickly, but it just shows the nature of the info, other development, I guess, in the area that. Sideways. I mean, they're built right up to the road edge in specific cases.
Yeah.
These are specifically, we have some memos from the planning department with the concerns, so we're already starting to address some of these items. We have to remove the 3 pines that are on the north side of the home with the addition. We're gonna have the arborists take a look at those, if we can replant them on site as well, but the homeowners already planted.
Yeah, the next slide.
Next slide, it's like the number of trees.
Planted 20 trees.
Yeah.
You have to get it in the.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry has a question.
Is that typical, when tree removal is involved in, a site to require 2-for-1 replacement? Is that typical?
No, it's not by code, but we're just trying to you know, just in good light, kind of present this project to the planning department.
Yeah, I also mentioned the view, issue that Jerry, yeah, so, if we put up more trees, it potentially blocks other people's views, so this is something you can get in balance, so. There was actually suggested, you know, more than 2-1, but the more trees we put in, the more impact on the view, so we don't want to do that as well, so we're trying to balance, we'll do the one. Okay.
And I would just say, in closing, I mean, I feel like what we're presenting is not atypical for the neighborhood. I feel like it's fits in the fabric of the existing neighborhood in a way that is gonna improve home values around and really just be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
Are the cards down there?
It's all virtual.
Okay.
And if anyone needs the laptop, I'll hand it over after the meeting so you can write in your comments. That way they're all in one place.
You provided the link for that.
Yep, it's also in the email that I sent you.
I have cards if anybody wants to email.
When I first started, I couldn't figure out what you were doing. It's pretty simple.
It is, it's essentially just the wood box from, you know, existing residences, white, CMU block. And then one side of it.
Especially for the border.
Any other board questions? Well, thank you for your time and good luck with your.
Can I ask a question in person? When
Say your name, just state your name.
January, when did you buy the house? Okay.
Any other questions?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time.
We're gonna move on to item C, board commissioner reports and announcements. Anybody have any reports or announcements? All right, seeing none, we're gonna move on to item D, future agenda items. Do you have anything for us, Victor?
Just probably an update on the Dickerson Road cleanup, but nothing else.
Next item is item E, public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Seeing none. This last one is for possible action. It is for action, I don't even say possible. But item F is adjournment. Will be a motion. Jerry, first, second, Christian. All those for? Anyone opposed? No, let's see. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.